emergency exits. So seeing no one rushing to the mic, let's move on to application A07-21. And we have a staff report in front of us. Thank you very much, Mr. Trotman. And maybe you could go through it, acknowledging that we have had this in front of us for a week now. Thank you very much for getting that material to us, Susan, in a timely fashion. David, to have any input, you may have to put your mic on. There you go.
I turned my camera off accidentally, and both are on now. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Riley. So this is a fairly straightforward minor variance application. It involves the replacement of an existing garage with a new one, such that there's going to be a reduction in the interior side yard setback to 1.66 meters, whereas 4.58 is required. Part of the test is not just measurement, but impact or possible influence over the medium to long term. I think my report is pretty straightforward. I don't see one. I've done many of these over the years. This is about as straightforward as it gets in my view. Additionally, though, and to your good foresight to find out what the abutting owners may have said, although they were circulated. So their obligation was through that circulation if they did in fact have an issue, and we never received anything. In fact, they did confirm with the applicants that we don't see a problem here, we don't have a problem here. So that was an email that came back to Susan, and I know was forwarded on to committee. Just as an interesting note here, it doesn't affect this at all, other than I have noted in the official plan policy that the Good of Mafra considers these lands, including these rural residential lands, as being long-term prime ag. The abutting lands surrounding these smaller rural lots, of course, are prime ag, and that was done as part of the official plan amendment number 33 exercise about, well, 2013, 2014. So that doesn't affect the existing permissible and permitted and legal and lawful uses, nor does it affect this desire for a slightly larger and new garage. But I just do find it interesting that they were captured. So it's part of OMAFRA's, shall we say, long-term vision to, regardless of lot size, identify what their mind are additional prime ag lands in Dufferin County, and of course also including Mono. Beyond that, I have not much more to say. I think the recommendation is straightforward. Those are typical and standard conditions, and it's in the hands of committee for decision, I think. Thank you.
Are there any questions of committee members of Mr. Trotman regarding his staff report?
No. I have a comment, maybe, John. I think
Yes,
the comment is that, as I've mentioned in meetings before, we're looking at paving over thousands of acres of agricultural land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think OMAFRA is just asserting their position that we better start looking at preserving some of this agricultural land, or else we're not going to have it. That's my only comment. I think David has already captured that pretty much, but that's why they're commenting back. There's no question about that in my mind.
Well, not directly, Jerry. This was part of their earlier exercise, as part of the Dufferin County official plan exercise, to look at what should be further prime agricultural lands. So, the subject, the Scots lands, as well as the surrounding smaller rural residential lands, have now been essentially considered to be, over the long term, prime agricultural. And of course, this is not unusual. They've done this elsewhere in Mono and other lower tier municipalities across Dufferin County and other counties for that matter. And of course, that will, as you say, come out in the wash when the upper tier, the Dufferin County official plan, gets finalized. You know,
could we uh, I think a number of us might like to comment a little bit more on that, but I'm sure Mr. Scott is thinking that this is rather tangential to the application in front of us.
It is.
So,
It is.
so perhaps we will deal with that first and then come back to this matter later. Yes, Mr. Trotman.
I would only say one more thing, and I mean, I've been saying this more often than not. Rural residential severances have to be carefully looked at, and of course, this law was already in existence. I get that; it's legally in existence.
So that has nothing to do with this particular application, Mr.
No,
So,
no, it doesn't.
so
It
let's
doesn't.
finish that application and let Mr. Scott. You've made the recommendation here. Does anyone wish to contest that recommendation or amend it or comment on it? If not, I would ask Mr. Scott if he wishes to add anything or comment in any way. Bob, any comments?
I'll wait for Mr. Scott to see what he has to say.
Very good. Brenda?
I don't have any comments. I support the application.
Okay. Corinne?
Same, I support the application. I have no questions.
John, let me say this. I also wholeheartedly support this application here. My only comment, and maybe it's one that you want for afterwards, is I just find it laughable that OMAFRA is considering a 1 acre parcel to be long-term prime agricultural. That means that they could declare my 3/4 of an acre that I've got here also as potentially long-term prime agricultural. That's my comments on this. I support this application. I'm happy to move that we approve it.
I'll second that.
Well, there we go. We've got a mover and a seconder, and I dare say that we might get approval and passage of this staff recommendation without Mr. Scott having to add anything to the conversation. But I do think it's the appropriate thing to do to ask Mr. Scott if he wishes to say anything at this particular point.
I appreciate the opportunity. I don't really have any questions. I'm just on pins and needles waiting for approval.
There you go. So seeing no additional questions of Mr. Scott, could I put that to the vote? As moved by Bob and seconded by, was it? Susan will have that written down. I think it was Corinne. So I think that's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. So to what the adjacent neighbor feels about it. This turned out just terrific because the neighbor was quite willing to speak and write in support of this. So all is well. So we just be clear on that in the future. If you don't mind, I think we should maybe continue a little bit with this discussion that Mr. Trotman raised. He raised two things, one of which was the OMAFRA agricultural system, and then he raised the Dufferin County official plan amendment and its agricultural system. And we already have in our official plan prime agricultural land identified, subject, well, the result of quite an investment of time by staff and consultants of the town of Mono to derive that, and that is what is reflected in the zoning schedules in the official plan. So we've got, I think, 3 different pieces floating around here, and again, what's in our official plan for the town of Mono, what Dufferin County is aspiring to, and then this provincial OMAFRA agricultural system. And because of its the confusion over this, perhaps I might ask you, Mr. Trotman, whether or not you might, for another meeting, briefly summarize just where these three pieces are at and how they relate to each other. It crops up in practically every application that we've seen for the last while is, oh, it's in the provincial agricultural system, but that doesn't matter. So at some point it is going to matter, and I would like to be prepared in knowing just how those have, where they're at and what their official status is at this point. I would remark in passing as well that the OMAFRA agricultural system was developed by one GIS staffer in Guelph, who I sought out when the province first tabled this, a lengthy discussion on two separate occasions with him about the methods that were used, and this conversation and discussion was written up as a note, which council of the town of Mono then adopted and forwarded to the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs in order to express the concern at that particular time about how at variance with our official plan the new OMAFRA agricultural system was. And that officially adopted letter, an expression from the town of Mono, includes statistics that were calculated by Mono staff, GIS staff, Jake, and about the proportion of the OMAFRA agricultural system as it was mapped, which is not in farming whatsoever of any kind, and then the proportion of it, and I think it was, my recollection serves me, and this I can check because I have that those calculations, was 17 to 20% of it was not in any form of agriculture, and a further 17% of it was in natural habitat that was captured by the town of Mono's natural heritage system. So what that implied was a level of inaccuracy, which we are coming back to time and time again about, why is this guy's backyard in the province's agricultural system? I mean, the province isn't going to buy the property and tear down the buildings and hire a farmer to farm it. So at any rate, so there's considerable confusion over all of this, and it would be great to know how those three different approaches relate to the decision-making that we face at the Committee of Adjustment, knowing that, for example, severances are treated differently in at least two of those systems, and perhaps differently again by Dufferin County's draft official plan. So that is the particular place where the rubber will hit the road, I expect, in the future. So that's my little preach on that topic, David. You shouldn't have got me going on that, but you started it. So, Jerry,
John, I can add to that a little bit. There was a committee struck from the township. I was part of that. It was called the Lear Study and land, whatever, agriculture, whatever. And OMAFRA were part of that, but they weren't really on the committee parts. Bob Shirley and myself, and I can't tell you who the other two committees were. But anyway, OMAFRA dictated how much land had to be in a contingent area to make it agriculture, and 565 acres is what they said. And so there was only about 3 in Mona Township that actually passed. And then when they went back to OMAFRA with it, they said, "Oh no, you got to have a bunch more." And so that's what they added to it, and that 17 and 17% was whatever it might happen to be was added to the prime agricultural. So what you're saying is true, and we didn't have any input into that part of it at all. My concern with the whole thing, and I'm not sure OMAFRA should be dictating what we do in the local municipalities, but certainly my concern with this committee is, and it certainly didn't affect this particular applicant at all, and it shouldn't an existing one. But my concern is that if we allow residential to go and let's face it, I'm in the agricultural business and probably as much as anybody in Mona Township. However, it really isn't going to affect me because I'm an old fart. But the problem with it is if we start letting houses or residential get into some of those good, I'm saying good from an agriculture point of view, maybe somebody that has nothing to do with agriculture says it's not so good. But if we start letting those be broke up and putting residential lots in the middle of them, then when I run my corn dryer all night, or as in last night, I finished combining at 10 to 1 in the morning, and the neighbors think, what in hell is that guy doing out there with roaring around with his combine, and there's tractors coming back and forth picking up corn and one thing and another, and tractor trailer going out of the yard and lights on. That's when we get into the problem. And so we've got to be aware of that as a committee, that there is contingent areas. People that come in and want to build whatever they want to build should know that that kind of stuff is going on, if in fact we want agriculture. I'm not sure we do. I've had this discussion with our mayor within the last month. And if we don't, let's make it residential, let's build the highways, and let's carry on, because it's hard to get a good prime agricultural structure with a viable operation in Mona Township because of hills, rocks, trees, rivers, whatever it might happen to be. So that's my preach on it. I just want to make sure that we're concerned about what goes on. And in the past 40, 45 years ago, there was all sorts of lots, and they were taken right around me, and there were 10-acre lots that ran back to full half the concession. And it's no good for anybody. It really, truly isn't, except for the people that think that it's really nice to have this 10 acres of land. And the truth of the matter is, and I've got neighbors, and they're good neighbors, and one thing and another too, they say, oh boy, I've got my 10 acres and it's got this, that, and the other thing on it. And they haven't saw the back of it except for goldenrod for the last 25 years. And so that's not going to feed the world as we go ahead. So that's my concern with it. And so if OMAFRA says it's prime agriculture, I would like to think that we are aware of it. I don't think it's going to change existing lots or one thing or another. And it probably isn't going to change a severance. Again, that's going to be Dufferin and whoever's the local people on it. But we should be really aware of it. And I can see mistakes that we might say we never made mistakes, but I've been on this committee for just about as long as Bob, and I think we've made mistakes too on this very subject. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. But I did spend 2 years on the Lear committee with the committee pulling that out for Dufferin County and for the township.
Thank you, Jerry. I think we're entirely sympathetic with your point of view on this, and it's the confusion and the lack of clarity between the 3 different approaches. So, Mr. Trotman, you'd like to?
Well, not to belabor this meeting by any means, and Mr. Ryan Scott, you're getting a bit of a land use economic planning primer, as well as the approval you got for your committee of adjustment application. But what Jerry is saying is important, and I think what makes me scratch my head is that if you look at your lot and the lots around you, Mr. Scott, for some reason OMAFRA has painted them, we call brown. So brown usually means prime ag. They've designated in the long term your lands to sort of match what are the existing prime ag lands, the larger lots to the east and north and west of you. Ironically, the Medill lands were not captured, even though all of the lands, I know Jerry's listening to me right now, even though all the lands around there were part of the OPA 33, that was the prime agricultural exercise that Jerry's alluding to, are prime ag. Anyway, all I'm going to say is this to wrap up.
Well,
Number one, lots in the rural area are.
No,
looked
no, no,
at
no,
very
no, no, no. I don't want to get into this tonight.
And,
Because we don't have pencils that will write fast enough to write down what you're going to tell us. I would
No,
like you
it's all good.
to take a little bit of time and write it out for us so that we
I'll
actually
give an update.
have
I'll give an
this
update.
in hand. It remains confusing. And one of the things I will send it to all the members, is the representation that the town of council made on the subject of the OMAFRA agricultural system and the Ministry of Natural Resources natural heritage system. They are not accurate and not useful in terms of day-to-day on the ground planning. There's
no issue with that.
And so this is the challenge when a particular application comes forward and someone says, well, how come my backyard of my 2 or 3 acre lot is prime ag? Like this is a problem of credibility, and it takes advantage of all of our good positive support for the protection of farmlands by perhaps, I'll wait to see what you have to write about this, but bringing it into disrespect because of the poor quality of the work compared with a 2-year study of, like the Lear study was, of a single town, a single township, whereas this particular individual at Guelph, he knocked off the entire Greater Golden Horseshoe in less than 2 months. I mean, this is not a desktop computer exercise. This requires township by township approaches, as Jerry was involved in.
Can I say something here? Because we could talk about this all night long, and everything that's been said here is quite legitimate. I'll bet Ryan Scott, who's still online there, got really surprised tonight to find out that his 1 acre property there is determined by OMAFRA to be long-term prime agricultural. Well, as technology changes, anything, including the tops of buildings in downtown Toronto, could become prime agricultural. So, if we want to pursue this further, let's schedule a meeting for it, and that we've done our job here tonight. Mr. Scott, I'd love a garage the size of the one that we've given him approval for here tonight, and that. So, but you know what I'm saying is we really could talk about this for a long time, and I think we're probably all in agreement on it. And I'm waiting for the day when they declare my 3/4 of an acre here at 23 Blue Heron Drive to be long-term prime agricultural. So,
well, that being said, I think we've all said enough on the topic, if not too much. And if we can leave it in Mr. Trotman's capable hands, I don't think there's any rush on this, but some clarity around this would be useful going forward at some point. So, and this is purely precautionary because it hasn't created us any issues over the course of the last year. So with that said, are there any more business matters that people would like to raise this evening?
I've got none, and I'm happy to move that we adjourn the meeting.
Someone second the adjournment?
I will second it.
Moved by Bob, seconded by Jerry. I hope if you would like some help with the minutes, Susan, be pleased to do that with you, given the inadequate recordings tonight. Thank you all, and have a fine evening and a good holiday season.
All the
Thank
best. Thank you. Well done, John,
Good night.
David, Susan. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks,
all.
John.
And thank
Good
you,
night.
Scott.